You surely didn't understand this addiction in the Squid Game. A recruiter visits a park offering homeless individuals a choice between bread and a lottery ticket. Most choose the ticket, and this surprises us. The logical choice would be the bread since it guarantees a meal for the day. But we are forgetting a very important detail. For these people, bread satisfies their immediate hunger, but the ticket offers the potential to transform their lives. It's very similar to what we saw early in Season 1. Song Yoon, drowning in debt, struggles to survive after hitting rock bottom, a low-paying job. And he steals money from his mother instead of buying a gift for his daughter's birthday. He decides to bet it on the horses. This happens in the real world. In fact, a study found that people in worse economic situations, 70% of US lottery players are represented. This could be because progress through traditional means seems impossible. It's very human to resort to chance as a psychological escape. And in this sense, Squid Game is not criticizing those who gamble, but rather presents us with an uncomfortable question. Why is our society designed in such a way that for many, a lottery ticket seems to be the only way out? Squid Game presents this and other questions, seemingly representing real-world situations like inequality, exploitation, and meritocracy. In this video, we'll discuss the authenticity of these situations, as we will take the themes from Squid Game and compare them with various statistics and studies from the real world to know how effective this critique is. I'm Go, the Geek Monitor, and today we'll take Squid Game very seriously. No one enters the Squid Game by chance. Each of the characters has a story that reflects the desperation of living trapped in a system designed to squeeze them. Song Yoon, with his gambling debts and his inability to support his daughter Ali, the immigrant who has been exploited for labor, Hyunju, who is discriminated against for being trans. And many other characters who have acquired debts they cannot pay, debts that drag them down further and further. So much so that each of them agreed to get slapped in the face playing with this recruiter, who offered them the chance to win 100,000 won. Roughly $68. This desperation explains why in Season 1, each of them chooses to return to the game even after seeing the danger they were facing. This decision may seem absurd to us, but think about it this way. Each of the desperate participants feels that they are losing in what we might call the game of life, one that they perhaps even consider unfair given the situation they are in. Put yourself in their place and answer, if someone offered you the chance to change your life in a game that supposedly is fair, would you take it? Let's move fiction to the real plane and to the numbers. And a question that can help us answer this is the following. Which is harder, winning the Squid Game or getting rich by working? In Season 1, the odds of winning the Squid Game are 1 in 456. That is a 0.22%. Now let's go with the reality in Mexico. Data shows that only 2% of poor Mexicans reach the top 20% of the population. The chance of winning the Squid Game is 0.22%, while getting rich by working in Mexico is 2%. The twist, that 2% equals an average monthly income of 50,000 pesos, corresponding to the wealthiest 20% in Mexico. But these incomes are nothing compared to the Squid Game prize, which is roughly 645 million pesos. In fact, if you deposited that amount into a high-yield account, you would receive around 2,150,000 pesos per month just from interest. To match the fortune of Ricardo Salinas Pliego, you would need to win the Squid Game prize approximately 155 times. And this is considering that Salinas Pliego recently lost half of his fortune and that he is not at all the richest Mexican. Imagine the monthly interest earnings of those even wealthier than him. This highlights the distinction between different levels of wealth among the rich. At one end are the incomes that the poorest 2% of Mexicans aspire to. Higher up is the wealth that Song Yoon earns by surviving the game. And far beyond, on an almost incomprehensible scale, are the VIPs who accumulate fortunes out of the reach of the majority. This tells us that the Squid Game in a way is simpler than the game we call life. Especially if we talk about countries like South Korea, the country with the highest household debt in all of Asia, where thousands of families owe more money than they can pay due to mortgages, high housing prices, and social pressure to maintain a certain lifestyle. The series provides multiple indications of this. You've probably thought that the houses and spaces are extremely small, not just for poor people like Song Yoon, but also for other characters who are supposedly better off economically. Several characters discuss massive debts casually, as if they were commonplace. Sang-woo, despite his debt, keeps up the facade of wealth to avoid social rejection. These economic problems have become a social issue as they have increased problems such as chronic stress, anxiety, and the suicide rate, something we also saw in the character of Sang-woo. The series successfully portrayed that the real world outside the game can also be incredibly cruel and visceral. So we understand and are horrified to see how many characters return to play after they are initially released in the first season, and we also see how many refuse to leave the game in the second, despite having already experienced these extremely high levels of violence. In addition, according to the organizers, it is a fair game, but how fair is the Squid Game? Leaving crimes aside, the organizers insist that the game is fair. So much so that the leader eliminates one of his soldiers for giving privileged information to a participant, which breaks the supposed equality of conditions. But do they all really have the same chances? From the start, each participant has distinct physical and mental capabilities. For example, in the tug-of-war game, the stronger players have a clear advantage. However, strength isn't everything. A seemingly weaker team can win with a smart strategy. But beyond skills or effort, luck plays a fundamental role here. In the cookie game, the level of difficulty depends entirely on a design they choose at random. While in the glass bridge game, the order of participation is also chosen randomly, which automatically condemns the first participants. And all of this seems to me a critique of meritocracy, which is the idea we have in the real world that effort and talent are enough to succeed in life. Just like in the game, conditions differ for each person. Life experiences differ greatly between those born into poverty without educational access and those born into wealthy families. And studies have shown that completely random elements like the conditions we are born into have a huge impact on our lives. And this has nothing to do with effort or skills. Where we are born is pure luck. In the real world, no one chooses the cookie we are born with, and in this sense, the game also resembles life a lot. Because it is replicating a system that rewards a few and punishes many depending on circumstances we do not control. Beware here that meritocracy is unfortunately a lie, but this does not mean that we should not strive. After all, we all live and have to survive in this system, so I suppose the best thing is to strive while being aware that much of our success or failure has to do with initial conditions that are either random. But this idea can be terrifying for some people. For example, in Squid Game, Sang-woo in the end said that he is alive because he tried very hard to win, while in the real world, Salinas Pliego mentions that equality is disastrous and harmful because it implies envy of the rich.
The left-hander has the other word, which is equality. And that word is disastrous, it's harmful, and it's on the side of evil. And the underlying thing that comes there is envy. But I believe that
the real problem lies in the fact that just like in the Squid Game, not only does luck play a very important role, but those people who were born in privileged places and now have power are the ones who fix the rules of the game. The VIPs in Squid Game symbolize the economic elite that manipulates the rules to their advantage. An example of this was seen in the glass bridge game, where a participant uses his experience after having worked for years in a glass factory to distinguish tempered glass from normal glass. This was not cheating at all, it was a participant using his skills to win the game. However, the VIPs decided to turn off the lights to make the game more exciting, which tells us about how this group adjusts the rules to their convenience. And yes, this also happens in the real world. A clear example of this is the practice of lobbying in the United States, where large companies donate huge amounts of money to politicians and parties with the intention of shaping policy to their convenience. For example, energy industry companies like Chevron or ExxonMobil have delayed laws and spread misinformation related to climate change, and recently the case of Nestle has been making noise, who has prevented women in the United States from having more maternity leave days to thus promote the sale of infant formula. The issue lies not only in the initial conditions, it's that many of these VIPs of the real world use their power to change the rules and stay on top. And well, maybe you're wondering why we allow it. Oftentimes, curiously, it's because we're too busy fighting with other people who are also victims of this system. One point that I found very interesting about the second season of Squid Game is that after each game, the participants voted to see if the games would end or continue. The prize money increased as each participant was eliminated. If they left, the accumulated money was split equally among all. This led to the formation of two rival teams, but it's much deeper than it seems. The divide between teams goes beyond those wanting to leave or stay. The teams actually represent two very different ways of playing the same game, as those who press the 10 button have a more individual than collective vision, while those who press the circle button seem to have a more collective than individual vision. Everyone had their reasons for pressing one button or another, but this reminds me of a thought experiment that exists in the real world. Imagine that every person in your country is forced to take a red or blue pill. The vote is secret. If more than 50% of the population chooses the blue pill, everyone in the country is saved. If more than 50% choose the red one, all the blues are eliminated. A few weeks ago, I posted an Instagram video on this topic, which sparked a big debate in the comments. First, I must tell you that the experiment is not designed to have right or wrong answers or to make a moral judgment. The answer reveals your perspective on life. Those who choose red tend to think about individual well-being, and yes, choosing the red option automatically saves you. Those who choose blue, on the other hand, risk themselves in an attempt to save everyone, which speaks to a more collective mindset. Tell me in the comments which one you chose and why. This very different way of playing the same game makes the sides hate each other, which is really what the game organizers want, to exploit these differences to create conflict. That's something we also saw in the first season in the dormitory fights, where the elite created a kind of food shortage which caused discontent, which ended in a big brawl. Why? In the series, it has to do with the entertainment of the VIPs, but it also relates to a real-world issue where people in power know that a divided and conflicted group is easier to control. Chaos, conflict, and political polarization become a distraction that prevents us from truly questioning the people in power. Not only because we are too busy fighting with our peers, but because many people feel they have to defend a position no matter what. We all know a person who voted for 10 politicians. Instead of judging their good and bad deeds, they come up with a bunch of mental gymnastics with the intention of justifying each of their actions, even if they don't completely agree with all. But I think the biggest question that Squid Game asks is, how far would you be willing to go for money? In the series, many participants commit horrible acts like betraying friends, manipulating others, and even killing in cold blood, all with the promise of a financial reward. And in the real world, it sometimes feels like that too. Money seems to be above everything. It's the engine that guides our decisions, and for many, the way in which a person's success or value is measured. The media constantly bombards us with messages telling us that we need more. And all of this is linked to Jacques Lacan's theory of desire. In fact, this book appears within the series and explains to us that human desire is never fully satisfied. We don't desire specific things out of necessity, but because others desire them and because we think those things will help us achieve something more intangible, be it happiness, status, or recognition. Our system constantly takes advantage of this, and it makes us believe that we need something more to be complete. The system intentionally produces shows like Squid Game, knowing their impact despite the content. That gives us the points clearly. It's very hard for us to see beyond. The struggle is represented through Song Wai-yoon. To match Salinas Pliego's fortune, you would need to win the Squid Game's prize of around 645 million pesos 155 times. 2,434 times to match that of Carlos Slim. 6,279 times to match that of Mark Zuckerberg. 7,244 times to match Jeff Bezos. And 13,519 times to equal Elon Musk's wealth. In Season 2, Sung-yoon uses his wealth to try and stop the game. And we see him buying a hotel, an orphan, renting vans, boats, and mercenaries. But when we compare him with the real millionaires, we realize how far he is. However, Sung-yoon's struggle may not be completely lost. It's true that it seems like we're trapped in a system designed for few to win, where the VIPs change the rules to their convenience, but I suppose that resisting individually and then inviting others to resist collectively are small acts of rebellion that maybe one day will lead us down a better path. It certainly won't be today. It's probably a message for you 2,000 years from now. But I suppose we have to start somewhere, and personally, I choose to do so even though I feel that the real change is not in individual actions but in collective actions. Just as I also believe that those people who say that it's either individual good or collective good are also wrong. I believe that collective well-being also implies individual well-being. But I say that because I would have taken the blue pill. But you tell me what you think. Don't go yet. If you like my video essay on the Squid Game, I have similar analyses of series like Malcolm or Avatar that you might also like. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel where I take pop culture very seriously. I am Go, the geek who monitors and looks beyond the obvious.